Finding the silver linings in love, life, and everything in between.
Welcome to the Silva Lining Podcast.
Here we explore everything from faith to relationships to personal growth and purpose.
Join us as we center these conversations around real life experiences and vulnerability as two young people figuring it all out.
We're happy to have you along for the ride.
Hey everyone, welcome back, and thank you so much for tuning in to the Silva Lining Podcast. We would so love it if you can leave us a review, whether that's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. It really drives traffic to our podcast so that more people can see it. And it'll also be really good for us to get feedback on how we're doing and what we can do to serve you guys. So please let us know by a review or letting us know through DM. All that helps.
On today's episode, we delve into the 5 love languages and how important it is to love your person the way they want to be loved.
We take the test live and share the results of the 5 love languages quiz.
It was so great to really take this test and self-explore with one another on the show and challenge what we already thought we knew about one another.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. So how exactly does one get fluent in their love language?
I think that's a really great question. I feel like in order to truly know what your love language is, you have to spend a considerable amount of time self-reflecting in order to determine what that is. Because how could I possibly expect you to love me in the way that I desire to be loved or in the way that I want to be loved if I don't first myself understand what my needs are or how I best feel loved and valued?
And it's actually loving your partner and important that you actually communicate your self-reflection of how you've learned, how you need love and what your needs are in relationships. In a sense, you're laying out the roadmap for your partner to not, shoot aimlessly and do all this guesswork, but to know just exactly what you need.
Yeah, I think that that's true. And continuing on with this language metaphor, like imagine if my primary language that I spoke was Chinese and you were speaking something completely different. Let's, for the sake of this analogy, say you were speaking Italian. For the entire course of our relationship, you didn't know that I was speaking Chinese, and I never made the effort or attempt to communicate to you that I was speaking Chinese. There would be no possible way for you to learn that, I might be speaking Chinese, and then you would get the opportunity to then learn Chinese to try and speak to me. I think without communicating to your person what your primal needs are or the ways in which you feel most valued and appreciated, their efforts can at best be like futile or ineffective. So it's really important, like you said, not just one, to understand what your own love language is and do the intentional work to self-reflect and see what those are for yourself, but also to then be vulnerable enough to share that with someone else.
I think that's hard for us guys sometimes because it feels like we're opening up about something that maybe is a bit of a touchy subject, or maybe a part of our past relationship history that we don't want to delve into, or maybe something we've been burned about.
I think also like society makes it really difficult for men to like have those kinds of vulnerable conversations. Like, and I maybe you can like touch on that. But like the mere fact that like as a man, there's all of this like pressure put on by society for you to be stoic, to be strong, to be like emotionless sometimes, and like to provide, to like be like all of these different things. It's really hard for men, I think, to talk about things like you said, like that, that require a bit more vulnerability.
I've been told over the course of my life that like why are you crying like you're a man? And I think that's really problematic because one, if we're setting societal gender norms about who could be sad, like that's just dangerous anyway, which way you look at it. Because I think at a core of being human, communicating how you feel, being open about how you're processing stuff is like the way to dealing with them and to growing and to becoming healthier in all aspects of life. So I've had to push past that and learn that even if a society doesn't support me in opening up about how I feel, I have to do intentional work to unpack that and process that.
Yeah.
So I might not be able to unpack that with all of my guy friends, but looking at different methods like therapy. I am someone who lives by therapy. The model that
Fun fact, he actually encouraged me to start therapy as well. And it was something I feel like I was like hesitant because like it's so stigmatized.
Mhm.
But when I saw you lead by example and like actually be able to express how much you learned in and through therapy, it was
Yeah.
really encouraging for me. Sorry.
No, I think that what's really good about therapy is that that person doesn't have a stake in your life, or they don't love you maybe in the same way as
They
they
probably
probably don't
shouldn't
love
love
you,
you.
but they don't care for you in the same way that your spouse does, in a romantic and in a life building way. They want to look at your situation and help you through it.
Yeah.
So they'll be able to be more objective about your life experience, and they'll be able to give you tools that not just apply to you, but will apply to like anyone. That there isn't. I think the Bible talks about there isn't anything under the sun. That God hasn't been made aware of or knows about. And I think the stressors of our life are not all the same, but there's different methods and ways through them. So therapy has been something that has been groundbreaking and revolutionary for my growth in my life, because it's so funny. I joke about this with my therapist all the time. Not that he doesn't help me, but a lot of the times in session, I'm actually helping myself just by talking to someone about it.
Yeah.
And I end up answering the question that I have, or developing like the way through that, simply by unpacking it. And he jokes with me all the time that like I already know what to do. I just have to like recall that and put in place things in my life to be able to implement them when the going gets tough. So I think that has been super important for me. Journaling, which I actually learned through therapy, but I have done in other aspects of my life, has been really important, because the Bible even talks about, write the vision and make it plain. I think there's something so important when it comes to not just memory recall, but processing when you write. It allows you to, set in stone, like, this is how I feel. This is the things I'm noticing. And then it gives you an amazing opportunity to reflect and look back on it.
Right. And I think
So,
also journaling is really validating
mm,
because it's between you and yourself.
yeah.
A lot of times when you share your feelings with people, they might want to give you solutions or like attempt to solve the problem. But like therapeutic journaling kind of gives you a space to just sit with the emotions that you're dealing with, or like the tensions that you're grappling with in a way that isn't really problem solving at the focus, but more so holding space for you to like be with these feelings that you're feeling.
Yeah. And I think people might be scared of things like therapy and journaling because there's a stigma around them, or that there's an expectation of how those should look like. But we're not asking you to be like authors when you're journaling. Like, you could
No.
literally take your phone, like, you have technology at your hands. You could take your phone and record a video journal. Like, I love those, like, like To Cornfield Chase with like Hans Zimmer, and it's like and like the plant is like growing over time, but it's documenting a process of like where you started and where you're going to become. And I've seen multiple people who've, in a year, they've taken one picture every day, or they've recorded a 10-second video, and you see that person's journey throughout that whole process. I think that's really rewarding. So there's multiple ways that you can actually journal and work through things.
But I think also even something as simple as like a gratitude journal is like really helpful too. Where I don't do it as much now because I feel like I'm so busy, which hold me accountable. Maybe I should get back to. But I used to have a prayer journal where I would write down things that I was praying for every single day, things that I was thankful for, things that, were on my heart for me to pray for. And every day I would engage in this process. And by the end of the year, the amount of problems that solved themselves, things that there were answers for, things that I now had clarity on, areas that I had grown in, blessings that I'd received. It was such a different kind of like reframing that I wasn't used to, but it was definitely helpful for centering me.
Yeah.
But in terms of like heading back to like what we were talking about earlier, because I think we kind of moved from the idea of the love languages, would you like to get back on track with that?
Yeah, actually, before I get into that, I did want to mention one more thing. And I think it's important that it's not to say that you're going to be in multiple relationships until you find the one. But I do think that relationship experience can be a useful tool to teach you a lot about how you experience love, how you communicate love, and how someone can understand and meet your needs. You know, one of my good friends, Mafuz, talks about this all the time, and he spoke about it in Real Community Talks, that I hope everyone in life can experience heartbreak at some point in their life, because it teaches you a lot of things that you might not have learned in any other area or season of your life. It's not to say that I wish heartbreak on someone, but there's so much value that I've learned from the things that didn't work in my life that I'm able to now apply to this relationship, because, you know, I had a space where, you know, it had been tested, but now I know what I need. Now I know how I want to communicate, what I would like to see, or even how I can love on someone. You know, they're not experiences for loss.
Yeah. I think something that a lot of women that I've spoken to, like they talk about a lot of times in terms of dating and how it often feels like when a relationship doesn't work out, the guy gets better for the next person. But I think and like they're always like a landing spot for like the training ground, so to speak, of him figuring out his mess, and then he'll go on to somebody else and be this awesome, amazing person. And like, as horrible as that might feel to be on the receiving end of it, I think if we sit and like reflect on that, that is how it operates. Like exactly like you said, like in my first dating relationship, even my most recent one before we met and started dating, I wasn't the same person that I am to you, which I think relationships end because of two people's actions a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, like now looking back on that, there were lots of ways that I contributed to that not working out as well. So I think what I'm trying to say is we do improve with every relationship that we get into. It's not just that we're learning about our needs, but we're also getting better, which then helps inform the other person's needs as well and how those needs can possibly be met.
Yeah.
So now that I've experienced those like really bad relationships, I'm able to be more empathetic in a relationship with you because of that.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm also aware more of what I need and what makes me feel loved and valued, but also because I experienced these like horrible relationships and encountered heartbreak, I'm also able to then be more empathetic towards you.
So The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman.
Yes. And I have the book right here.
And I think it's important to add this disclaimer that love languages aren't only romantic love languages, but any type of relationship in life.
Yeah. And like matter of fact, like the author, even though this first book was written for couples, there has been since multiple versions made. So there's this one, The Secret to Love That Lasts, which is obviously romantic, but then there's one for parents and children, there's one for teenagers, and there's even one for singles, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, and I'm actually excited, like after this, to try the different types of tests, because there's the one that, you know, talks about your love languages, then your apology language. Like there's so much that you can unpack over time, and continue to learn about yourself over time, because as we had mentioned before in our other episode, that marriage and working through these things is a lifetime. Like you have to be committed to continual learning of each other and yourself. So to go through the love languages in no
but
particular...
before you get to that, I think it's also important to mention that even though this book was conceptualized and these terms were coined inside of a Christian framework, and there's biblical references and these kinds of things, the principles are applicable whether you're religious or not.
Yeah.
Whether you're Christian or not. I think that that's really important to say, because maybe people won't reach for it because, you know, it's by like a Christian author and like it has Christian connotations and that kind of thing. But I think like the psychological, behavioral, emotional undercurrents that kind of fuel the book are really applicable to humans all across
I think there's like this weird idea that faith somehow means that like human psychology doesn't apply to our lives and how we interact with each other. So let's actually go through the love languages in no particular order. So to start with, quality time. So things like uninterrupted, dedicated time together with conversation and direct engagement. Then words of affirmation, things like encouragement, affirmations, listening carefully and actively, acts of service, showing love through actions and efforts, gifts, thoughtful gifting, whether that's material or otherwise, to show your partner they're a priority. And lastly, physical touch. I mean, that's kind of self explanatory, but it's nonverbal expressions of love and affection using body language, whatever that may look like for you.
Even though there's only 5 love languages listed in this book, it's not the be all to end all.
Yeah.
There is like a myriad of ways that you can show love to your partner, and this list isn't exhaustive.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really important to say first and foremost. Also, I think it's really important to note that based on the scale of when you do the quiz online, or any one of the numerous love languages quizzes that there are online, even if your partner scores lower on one of them, like for example, even if I score like 6% on physical touch, that doesn't mean you completely write off physical touch for me forever and you only prioritize the other ones.
Yeah.
Because I think it really depends on instant to instant. Like this is sort of like to help you, but it's not like a surefire way to know in every single circumstance
100%.
how to react.
100%.
Right?
It's not like a contract to live by.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you can run into trouble is when, you know, you look at it from a very like methodical, formulatic type of way. Like,
Yeah.
all right, my wife really likes gifts. So you just continue to buy things and then using that love language to like get yourself out of a situation or, you know, be an excuse to like behavior that's
well,
terrible
I
bad.
think that's why a lot of women, like I see it all the time on TikTok, where women only get "I'm sorry" flowers.
Yeah.
And it kind of like cheapens the experience of being surprised by something beautiful because you only give them in instances where you're in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think for me personally, like gift receiving, it isn't the biggest thing for me, or well, it hasn't been, but the intent behind the giving is really important to me.
Yeah.
Like when you're out or you're coming from work and you like stop to pick me up some beef jerky, like that's really meaningful to me, even though gift giving isn't like my primal love language or the way that I feel loved. And even though gift giving is like down here, or well, it was when I last did the test on my list of love languages, the fact that you thought about me in an instant to surprise me because you thought of me because this is something you know that I like, I think is really important. All of that to say, I don't think people should write off the love languages that are not the top priority ones on your assessment once you do it.
I think they should add like a side gift giving because like giving your partner snacks is like a different type of love language.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think it's also important to add that these should be rooted in a deep desire to love, appreciate, value, respect your partner.
True.
So then things like, you know, showing your partner that you love them with "I'm sorry" flowers becomes less of the norm and more of like a deliberate gesture to like show them that you love them on the daily through daily consistent actions.
Yeah. I was talking about this with my guy friends. Like, I feel like, I don't know if it's just like guys, but we sometimes find that we get into this place of like love language quota where it's like, okay, if I know that my partner likes acts of service, I'm going to do, you know, the dishes every other day so that I can, you know, get her off of my back or like have her not be critical of me or, you know, address something that maybe she corrected me on last time. So it's like, I have a perfect track record. So she has no ammo to work from. But like, even in saying that out loud, it sounds insane. Like you're trying to like just script, but you're just trying to, like it's avoidance on like an unhealthy level. Like I don't want to have my partner speak up or say this or act like or treat me like this, so I'm going to do this to avoid that, and it's a dangerous, problematic space
because I don't think the love languages and the enactment of the 5 love languages is meant to be a currency or like a tool for manipulation. I think it's meant to be more of like an awareness or like some sort of gauge for you to, you know, be able to better love your partner.
Yeah.
So if you're using it as a tool to be like, I've done this many things, so now you have to do this many things for me, or like people joke about it all the time. Like, oh, I'll do the dishes so that I can get something else
Yeah.
later on or whatever. Like that's not
It's
what,
transactional.
yeah. And it's not a, like I said, it's not a currency or a transaction. It's not I do for you, so you do for me. It's meant to be rooted in, regardless of if I get anything, I want to serve you. I
Yeah.
want to do something that will show you that you love, that I love you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And further to that, as time progresses, your love languages will evolve. Like your preference or affinity for one of them will evolve. And like, when do you think was the last time we did the quiz?
Maybe like 6-7 months before our wedding.
Or whenever we did the marriage counseling, I think that's when we did it.
Yeah.
So I have a fun idea. Why don't we try and do it now that we're 7 months into marriage?
I'm interested to see like how much it's actually evolved and changed, because I feel like my answers might be a little different in some areas now.
Now that like we live in the same house.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, so we're back. Let's share the results.
You want to go first?
Okay, let's do like a 3, 2, 1 countdown. Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Words
Acts
of
of service.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
That wasn't that last time.
No, it wasn't. And it
Wow.
was like so interesting to like see, because it's acts of service, then quality time, words of affirmation, receiving gifts, and physical touch.
Wow.
So I think those 2 last ones stay the same. But the other 3, they're out of order from how it was before we got married.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think 1, because like I see you all the time now.
Yeah.
So like the words of affirmation piece probably isn't as important as, not that it's not, but it's probably less important than it was when we were only using a phone to communicate, and like we would see each other less often. But now that I see you all the time, I think acts of service is the highest, because I need help with chores.
Right.
Or like maybe now that there's so many things
Where
that
you find
like,
appreciation in that space more.
and like so many things that we have to balance, it really does like bless my heart when you help me out with things that I probably would opt to not do if given the choice.
No, but that actually makes a lot of sense. Like, again, we mentioned how your love language is going to evolve and change over time.
Yeah.
So that's actually really fitting, that, because I feel like now one of the biggest issues that we have to combat is finding the time to do anything. It's because, you know, we're working, we're creating content, you know, we have side hustles, and then we have to take care of this house and the mountain of chores that seem like they keep cycling over and over and over again. And then we also have to find time to pour into our relationship.
Yeah. And for me, I think it really makes me feel loved and valued when you do things like, you know, when I'm doing my work upstairs or something, and you'll come upstairs with the basket of laundry with everything like neatly folded and put back in the basket.
By the way,
all of the socks and everything, like just like you work at like Abercrombie and Fitch or something, because it's so neatly folded. But it's such a tangible expression of how much you love me, because I'm able to focus on the things that bring me joy, but also the things that I need to do that are sometimes more pressing than folding laundry.
And I've become an expert folder because the amount of shapes this girl has in her clothes, like my clothes is like, all right, the sweater, you do this, you fold this, but like there's like some things that are like on an angle, on a curve, don't make a perfect square. I think I've been through the trenches.
I think you do a good job folding clothes.
Yeah.
So yours was words of affirmation.
Well, mine.
So that's your words of affirmation.
Wow.
Thank you for being a great folder.
Well, okay. So on mine, 34% is words of affirmation. So that actually stayed the same from dating, engagement to now marriage. But my second one used to be physical touch. And now physical touch is the third one. It's still very important, don't get me wrong. So it goes 34, 28, and 24.
Wait, what's your second one?
My second one is quality time.
Oh, wow. Mine too.
Quality time never used to be, it used to be like a 4 or a 5 to me, right? Actually, you know, it always was a 4 because I score 0 on gifts. Because personally speaking, like, I don't need gifts. I would much rather like spend time with my person or hear you, you know, encourage me and all these kinds of things. It's not that I don't appreciate gifts.
Yeah.
But like, I don't want you to have to go out of your way to buy me something or do something for me, because, you know, I can live a pretty simple, plain life, but live a rich life with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, to find out that quality time is my second one, it goes back to what I was saying. Like, I think it's really hard to balance all of the competing interests we have in our life now. I think that there's two things. We now have to create quality time in the midst of doing those things. So I know
Yeah.
you mentioned you missed doing our Saturday, or sorry, our Friday night weekend cleanup dates because we haven't had the time to do that because we've been away for various like events and stuff on Fridays lately. But we would come home after work like literally like 10 p.m. in the night and be cleaning till like 3 in the morning. And like
But it would like set the tone for
yeah.
like a good weekend, knowing that you're in a house that's super spotless and clean and smells like what's the thing that you like to mop up?
Pines, wait, lavender pine sol, not just
Yeah,
regular
and it
pine sol,
would smell so
lavender pine
good.
sol.
And the floors are sparkly and all of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But
We'd listen to worship
yeah,
music,
and or like other
dance,
stuff
have
and
fun.
like dance and stuff while we cleaned.
Mm.
And it was a really creative way to get what needed to be done.
Yeah.
And also spend time with one another in a meaningful way,
Yeah.
working towards a shared goal, aka a clean house.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think like there's lots of ways that you can kind of creatively tackle multiple of these things
Yeah.
in ways that doesn't upset the routine that you have. I think people have the kind of assumption that it needs to be like reinventing the wheel. It needs to be these huge, grandiose types of gestures. But in reality, it can be really simple things that are effective.
Yeah. Even though quality time, it talks about being present and paying attention. I think we're realizing increasingly that like watching our favorite TV series, while very fun,
Yeah.
really isn't quality time.
And I think like speaking to that, we actually had like a little bit of like a tense conversation about that where I was feeling very, emotional, and I felt like we weren't spending quality time with one another. Matt's qualm is that I'm always on my phone when we're talking or when we're like trying to do something like watch a show or whatever. And I promise I'm trying to get better at that. But for me, like my piece was that I felt as though when we were sitting like watching TV and like, when Netflix asks like, are you still watching? Because we'd be watching for like hours.
Yeah.
Like, because we're so tired after a long day.
Yeah.
And the thing that we resort to is like TV because
Something
it's
mindless,
easy,
yeah.
mindless. We can just watch, laugh, whatever, eat a snack or whatever the case is. But to me, that didn't feel like quality time.
Yeah.
Right? So I think sometimes too, you have to push it further. It's not just, oh, my thing is gift, so I'm just going to bring a bunch of red roses and drop it on her desk and expect that to be the be all to end all, or turn on the TV, we sit beside each other, and then that's quality time. And that's not to say that I don't enjoy doing nothing with you, because I could be doing absolutely nothing with you and enjoying that time with you. But I think for me, it has moved to a place where now, because we are around each other all the time, it needs to be like intentional time, like carved out for us to spend time of quality together.
So let me ask you a question, because I feel like I'm not in the same boat as, or sorry, I feel like I'm in the same boat as some other people, both men and women alike. Don't you feel like sometimes in marriage, you can get to that place where you feel like you've run out of things to talk about? Not that you're not committed to continually learning and growing with that person, but like I think I
You've
find myself
already run out of things to talk about with me?
No, I think, believe it or not, as much as we're podcasters, I feel like there are moments where it's not that I don't want to talk to you, but it's like I also don't want to like say something like randomly without like any thought or like any intention, and just start conversation
let me
to start
stop.
conversation.
Let me stop you there though. I personally think like one of the cool things about marriage is that you can do that. Like you can tell me the most random, unrelated, disconnected type of thing, and to me, like that's, oh, we're having a moment. But like that's something
Flamingos are pink because they eat
yeah, like that's something that's an inside story for another time. But like that's something that's interesting to me, that because we live in this covenant where we share everything with one another.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, like I think that's really
So you
endearing
don't find
to
it
me.
in like inauthentic if I'm just like you don't ever get the sense that like, oh, he's just like trying to make conversation.
No, never. Like I never feel like
that's good
that.
to know.
And I think sometimes when we're like driving and stuff or like commuting like to and from work,
Yes.
like
Bless you. You okay? You want
I
water?
was coughing.
Oh, I still bless you because like I don't want you to
Thank you.
get like the bubonic plague or anything.
Thanks. But I think sometimes, like when we're driving and you will ask me questions that are so like out of the blue and random, but I really appreciate that because you're asking me to think about things that like on a normal, natural basis, I'm not even
We
like
actually,
aware of. Like you ask some
yeah.
of the most random questions ever. And I'm trying to like think of one on the spot
No, but like we literally have the realest community talks in
in
our
the
car.
car.
And
Yeah.
I think we struggle with this sometimes in like vulnerable moment, like breaking, what is it, breaking the fourth or third wall? I can't,
Fourth wall.
fourth wall. Like we have like a pre-podcast sometimes when we're on our way
Yeah.
home planning for the podcast we're about to release. And it feels like that was like so amazing and so
Yeah.
perfect. And then when we get in camera, I guess we get a little shy and we're like overthinking it. But I was talking with another friend and I said, you know, making intentional time is going to have to require some creativity.
Yeah.
And I do believe that that 1 hour drive, like, regardless of where you are, like, you're in a 1 hour of traffic or the subway, whether you're on the 427, the 400, you know, going on the TTC, you might as well make use of that time and do something useful. And don't get me wrong, there's moments where, like, you know,
Yeah.
you kick back the seat and you rest. But I find that some of the most profound and some of the deepest talks about life in our own marriage and processing things is during our commute. So, you know,
But
I've really enjoyed that
yeah.
that aspect of driving because I know
I
every time we get in a car, it's about to be a good conversation.
yeah.
So,
I think the piece about creativity when thinking about the love language is really important because like over the course of your marriage, I think things can get stale or get boring. And if you're not actively trying to keep it fresh, then it's only normal and natural that you might get
yeah.
you know, like jaded or bored or whatever the case is. Yeah. So I think even with things like words of affirmation, like challenge yourself to find creative ways to do that. Whether that be like sending a lengthy text message as opposed to like one words when you're like throughout the day or like leaving sticky notes in the person's lunch bag or like what I do for you or you know like find things like do you like that?
Oh, I love that 100%.
So
I
like
have like a whole stack on my desk and I'm going to
right.
create like a collage and everything.
So like finding creative ways to do things like that. Or for example, if your thing is quality time, like plan a surprise date night at home. Doesn't need to be expensive or like all the way out there. You can do things within your means that are meaningful, I think.
Okay, so what was the like the top acts of service that you've experienced so far since you've been married?
Well, just the other day I was sick and I was in bed because I literally, for the life of me, like I couldn't bring myself to get up because I was so under the weather. And you clean the entire house, like from top to bottom. And I remember when I got up out of bed and finally made my way. Okay, not to mention the fact that you also brought me lemon water for me to drink because my throat was sore. You brought me hot water with salt for me to gargle for my throat. You brought me Advil. You brought me some snacks to keep upstairs while I was there, while you were cleaning downstairs. Then you cleaned the whole downstairs. Then when I came downstairs, like everything was neat and organized and ready for the week to start. It was so meaningful to know that I didn't have to worry about those kinds of things and that you took all of the not that I would be doing all of those things by myself anyways, but the fact that you went the extra mile to like give me space to heal physically also did wonders for my mental health as well.
I really love you.
I love you too. But like it really did a lot for my mental health to know that, you know, you were so willing to, after a long day of work where you came home late, you were still willing to like put yourself on the back burner in that moment. Cause I'm sure you could have easily sat on the couch, put on the TV. I'd be upstairs napping, so it wouldn't be like I'd be bothering you. Watch whatever shows you finally want to watch. And that would be that. Like, that would have been the easier thing for you to opt to do.
You know,
but in the moment, you chose to choose me and to love me and to do things that would serve me in a way that would alleviate stress. And I think that's why acts of service is my really big thing, because I feel like as a person who wears like lots of different hats,
yeah,
and as a person who has lots of different responsibilities and lots of things on my plate at any given time, when you help share the load in ways that are not necessarily your responsibility, but you help me to lighten the burden, it really does show me that I'm loved. Because you're also doing things that you don't necessarily have to do, and also things that you don't necessarily enjoy.
yeah,
And that in itself is a really big love language.
Yeah.
Like choosing to do something that you actually hate doing
yeah.
for the sake of the other.
I said this, I believe, both in my vows and in my speech when we were getting engaged, that my life's greatest purpose is going to be to serve you. And I know this whole love language discussion to some people might seem like a chore and like an added burden, like we said, a quota to meet. But I love getting to like help and support you, to see you like feel appreciation, to see you get all the things that you need to continue to do all the things that you have to do. And the smile on your face, like it has intrinsic value. There's such a joy to love on you and to treat you well and to meet your needs that like I feel love back.
Yeah.
Like it's a reciprocal
Yeah.
space.
Well, I think that's the thing, right? If it's not bringing you joy to love your person and see them be happy, see, like, I think it should bring joy to your heart seeing your person be loved well.
Yeah.
Right? And if it's not doing that, I think then that's a bigger problem that maybe we have to explore in like another time.
I get excited when like solve a problem for you.
Yeah.
Cause like not because I need like praise or whatever, but like it's like a mini mission for me. But like
Yeah.
I just really enjoy what you thought was impossible becoming possible.
And also, like, side note to the ladies, just you can sometimes just pretend you can't open
wow.
you can sometimes pretend that you don't know how to open, not that you don't know how to open, but that you can't open like pickle jars, tomato sauce, whatever the case is. I think that makes them feel really useful. Okay, so now we're just going to ask each other two questions that we have not planned. Okay, like these are just things that we thought about and we're going to answer them. Okay, so Matt, my question to you is, let me see, I have it written here. What is one to do when their love language does not align with their partner's? And let me just flesh that out, like for all intents and purposes. Okay. So let's pretend my love language is physical touch. That's like my number one go-to thing where I feel, I said, let's say it's not that. It's actually last.
Wait, we actually have a conversation about that after, but continue.
Okay. So let's just say like that's my first thing. And yours is not that at all. Like you don't necessarily find yourself gravitating towards that. How do you go about that? Like when they're not aligned? I think generally speaking, ours are kind of similar. Like we both have gifts and physical touch, like they're reversed, but they're our bottom two. And then our top three are kind of like similar. So how would you navigate having them completely different?
So I think there's two important things when it comes to love languages now aligning. Point one, marriage is about negotiating and brokering and having conversations about how you're going to act and do things. So I think, for instance, if my love language is physical touch and you don't really enjoy that as much as I do, not getting offended because that person doesn't like that, but listening to understand, like asking questions. And it's also up to the person who doesn't like that to be open about why they don't like that. Maybe there's underlying abuse that happened in their past, or they're just not like a huggy person, you know? So
I think that's really true. And an extension of that is also not thinking that each love language can only be one thing. Like physical touch doesn't necessarily only mean doing the deed, right? Like it means like in the small ways throughout the day, touching your back when you're washing the dishes, or like holding hands on the couch while you're watching TV, or like a kiss on the cheek before you leave for work. Like all of those things are physical touch. It's not just the one thing.
Well, I thought that when we got engaged, the hand holding floodgates would open up. And yes, she is by pigmentation a brown girl, but she has like that brown girl mentality. And even now,
through and through.
Now that we're married, sometimes you feel shy to hold my hand in public.
100%. I don't think after the wedding, like I've held your hand in front of my family ever.
What I have noticed during
maybe the Lord will deliver me from that one day.
But what I have noticed during the married season of life is that you have compromised at times. And I think that goes into my next point, is that loving your person and this whole space of love language does require service. And it does require servanthood behavior. And what that means is you're not always going to like to do things for others, and that can apply to many aspects of our life.
Like for example, me coming to watch every single one of your softball games, like on the team you play with my brother.
No,
like,
you're
like no offense.
Kind of like not Bati, a super fan.
No offense. Like I'm not so interested in softball. And again, I think this goes to show like this applies to all relationships, not just romantic ones, because for both you and my brother, like I could care less about softball, but I like position myself, free up my schedule so I can be there every single Tuesday, because I know it means a lot to you guys that I'm there supporting you and like making an effort to understand the game. And so I think that's like a small kind of like a small example of how, even if it's something you don't necessarily enjoy that much, like putting yourself out there to acquaint yourself with the things that bring your person joy is really important. I think that's a good point.
And speaking of brown girl mentality, like tell them how long it took for me to actually get to sleep in your childhood room whenever we slept over at your parents' house.
For the longest time, he was sleeping elsewhere in my parents' house because even though we were married legally under the eyes of God in covenant relationship, I couldn't bring myself to like, because like to me it was like, what are they gonna think when you emerge from my bedroom?
They know we're married though.
The first time after we slept over there, like it was just weird to me. And like finally I've acclimated and now it's okay. But
it's like a goldfish when you get them in their bag and you have to use some of their water to put into the fish tank.
Like that.
She needed some time. It's okay. It's okay. I love it.
But I think like, as funny as that is, I think it really does speak to what you said first, and like digging deeper to like know what the reasons are. Like, for example, if your person, like they have such a big need to be validated and reassured all the time, like it could also be related to things of their childhood or like their upbringing, like, and their inner child needing that kind of thing as well. So sometimes, and I think this ties back to the first part of the conversation where therapy and self-awareness is really, really key.
All right. So if you were Gary Chapman and there was one love language that you could add to the 5 right now, what do you think is one that is just a must and has to be there that's missing?
Buying snacks. That's what we said before. No, but like all jokes aside, I don't know that I would necessarily add a love language because I think when you view them through a creative like perspective, there's so many things that fall in that, right? So like even though it's 5, it's probably like 50,000 when you think of all the things that you can do under the umbrella of the 5 love languages. But what I would say is before you think about the love languages, maybe there are 3 other things that you think about like before. So if this is the love languages, like maybe these are the phonics before you learn the language. And so like that might be like appreciation, affection, and like acknowledgement. Like those are the 3 that I thought about like earlier this week. I was thinking about like the desire to do the love languages is motivated by I want to be appreciated. I want to feel seen or acknowledged, or I want to feel affection. And those are kinds of the driving factors that get us to the place of like acting on the love languages, right? So for example, I want acts of service, right? Like that's how I best feel loved. But the reason, like the root of that is because I want to be seen. Like, I want to be loved in a way where I feel like the details of my everyday life are like important to someone. And so being acknowledged is at the root of why acts of service mean so much to me. And like for you, yours are like words of affirmation. And the root of that might be because you really like to feel appreciated. You like to feel like what you're doing and who you are is truly being valued. So I think I wouldn't add another love language. What I would do is say that we kind of have to think about like the values that inspire the way that we want to be loved. Because if we can figure that and pinpoint that first, it also changes the way that we act on the love languages.
So we'd actually like you guys to comment below, whether you're on YouTube or Spotify or on Instagram, what are your love languages, and maybe take your partner and start a conversation there.
We're going to leave the link to the love languages quiz in the description box below.
So check it out, guys.